Yeah, the HBase is set up successfully on our cluster using Cloudera Manager. Now let us actually validate that installation is working without any issues. For that, we can connect to the gateway node. We have already configured Big Data Server 1 as gateway for our HBase cluster and then run HBase shell. If everything is set up properly, it should be launched without any issues. However, sometimes even it might actually start HBase in local mode. To ensure that it is not started in local mode but in cluster mode and also it understands the complete cluster, what we can do is we can run a command called status. It will tell us what is the current status of this cluster. We have 3 masters, 1 is active and 2 is backup, and then we have 3 region servers in our cluster and everything is reflecting here, which means it is actually using the cluster instead of local HBase installation. That being said, if you want to get the list of commands that are supported as part of HBase shell, you can just type help and hit enter and you can see the list of commands here. They are grouped into general, where we can get the status, version, who am I, etc. Then DDL, where we can actually create tables. Then namespace. Namespace is like schema in traditional RDBMS. It's nothing but group of HBase tables. DML, which is nothing but CRUD operations such as create, read, update, and delete. Then tools to manage HBase. Some commands grouped under replication. Snapshots for taking backups. Configuration, quotas, security, etc. So there are commands in different categories. As administrator, you might have to focus on the tools and replication more than any other things, but it is not the time to do so immediately. Over a period of time, you should be able to comfortably use these commands to manage HBase in your cluster. That being said, to validate and turn out the cluster for developers or production support to deploy the applications, what we have to do is we have to just create some tables and then we can take it from there. First, we will be creating something called namespace. For that, we can use command called create_namespace. The commands will autofill after typing few characters. In this case, I am creating a namespace called training. So namespace is created. You can say list namespace and hit enter. There is HBase, default, and training. HBase and default are created as part of the setup process itself. And I have created training. To check whether the namespace have tables or not, we can say list namespace tables. And then we can give the namespace name, which is nothing but training in this case. And as of now, there are no tables. If you just say create table by saying create command, it will automatically create in default. However, if you want to create table in the namespace which is created, we can say create the namespace name colon the table name. So in this case, I'm naming it as testing. When it comes to create table in HBase, it needs to have a column family. So column family is nothing but a group of columns. And when it comes to HBase, it have a flexible data model where we can actually add column names while loading the data into the table. So there is no rigid predefined structure for HBase tables. It is very flexible. For that reason, instead of creating columns while creating the table, we actually create column family along with the table, and then columns will be added while inserting data into the table. So in this case, the column family name is CF1. Now the table is created, we can actually say list namespace tables training or list training colon star. I think the syntax is a bit incorrect. I have to say dot star. Now you can see the table training colon testing. As the table is created, we can actually perform CRUD operations. If you are familiar with RDBMS, CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete. So for create and update in HBase, we have put command. Using put, we just add cells into the HBase tables, and whether it is create or update, it will just add a cell. And the past values for a given key will be kept as history, and you can control how much history you want to retain for each and every cell within HBase table. Cell is nothing but a combination of column name and value. That being said, to perform create or update operation or insert or update operation on HBase table, we just have to say put training testing, which is nothing but table name. We have to give the row key. Each and every HBase table have a row key. We will actually come back to this in a moment. So in this case, I'm giving row key as 1. This is mandatory. You have to specify the row key. It can be of any data type. Internally, it uses byte stream to preserve. Whether you pass the row key as string or a number, internally it will be stored as byte stream only. Then we can actually specify the column family name, column name. So in this case, the column name will be column 1, and then we can actually add the value for that column. Again, the value can be of any data type. We don't need to specify data type while loading the data. Internally, it will be stored as byte stream itself. It will convert the types internally and it will store the data as byte stream. Now the first cell is inserted. you can actually run scan command to get the list of rows in the table, or to get the values from the rows in the table. So scan training testing, you can see there is one row at this time, the row key is 1, and there is one column name is cf1 column 1, and value is value 1. Like this, you can add as many cells as you want. So there seems to be some syntax issue. Okay, table name is HBase demo as part of our material, whereas I have created the table as testing. So let me run these put commands with training testing itself. So all the 4 records are inserted into this table. We can actually run scan now. There are 4 cells, however, there are only 2 rows. The number of rows are determined by the number of unique values which you can see as part of row field. Okay. Now when you actually insert data into a HBase table, data will be sorted in ascending order by row key. So even if you insert a new record with row key as 2, now that 2 will get into the middle of 1s and 4s which we have in the table. You can see here, data will be automatically sorted by the row key. Within each row also, data will be sorted based on column name. You can see here, all the column names within a given row key are sorted. So this is very important from the developer perspective. They have to understand these features and come up with the data model. However, from the administration perspective, it is not that important. We have successfully inserted records into a table, and also we have scanned data from the table. We can also run get command, and as part of the get command, we can actually pass the row key for which we want to get the data and hit enter. And you can see the output here. There are 2 cells for that key 1. So here 2 rows is a bit misleading. It is actually 2 cells from the table for key 1. That being said, these are the primitive operations which can be performed in HBase. You can also see list of filters by running show filters command. These are the filters which are supported based upon the design considerations on the key as well as the values, which are nothing but column names and values. We can use appropriate filter as part of the development process. It is primarily a requirement for the developer to understand all these things. That being said, we have successfully created the table and performed CRUD operations in our table, and hence we can confidently say that developers can actually use the environment for the development of applications. If it is dev cluster, if it is production cluster, production support should be able to deploy the HBase based applications, and they should be able to interact with the database that is running on our cluster.